Thank you for joining Best Practices. With me today is Erich Mattei, who is the President and Chief Vision Officer of Akrinos. How you doing, Eric?
Steve, doing great, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. Thank you for joining. Um, I know you've got a ton of expertise. You've been in the industry for a while. Could you give a quick introduction? How did you get into eye care, and why are you still here?
That's a great question. Well, we'll start with how I got into it. It would have been the summer of 2010. Had the opportunity to enter the industry and the vision care franchise of a global leader in eye care. And Steve, that's where it all started, right? 2010, sales rep with an amazing contact lens company. And, over the years, became fascinated by the business. And for me, became really fascinated, heck, I'll say obsessed with seeing doctors in this private practice journey tackling those big business milestones, right? Whether it's starting or purchasing their first business, growing their established business, transitioning their legacy business. And it was kind of around that fascination that in the summer of 2021, I launched Akrinos. And here at Akrinos, our mission is simple, Steve. We are in the business of making the business of eye care approachable, accessible, and profitable to optometrists who are starting, growing, and transitioning their private practice. So we are all about private practice and really, Steve, empowering doctors to stay in ownership of their journey throughout that business life cycle.
Oh, that's awesome. That's how you got started. What is it about the industry that keeps you excited?
For me, it's a couple of points, and I think most notably, it's when we look at what's occurring in healthcare right now, right? The overall quality of care and patient experience is kind of on the decline. But what's so fascinating about healthcare is that when we look at private practice, we see indeed the rate of physician burnout in private practice is below national benchmarks. The cost of care is below national benchmarks, and the overall quality of care and patient experience is radically above benchmarks. In fact, there are some surveys that show that patients prefer going to an independent at a rate of up to 4 to 1 over alternatives. So that's really what keeps me around, Steve. And that's the fire in the belly, right? I know we've had the opportunity to collaborate in many capacities over the years. And well, through the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows, the fire in the belly here at Akrinos is all about empowering private practitioners to thrive in practice ownership. Why? Because we realize all these stakeholders that are served.
Tremendous. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. I know we share that in common. I've been in the industry for going on 25 years now, which is always a little bit wild to say, but the reason why is the people we get to work with and what they're trying to accomplish. So if I can play a small part in their business getting a little better so that they can provide better care for their patients, I think of that as a win. So thank you for the introduction. Thank you for joining me today. Being that this is best practices, I would love to talk with you about I think an expertise that you've developed, a hard-won expertise that you've developed over the past couple of years. Best practices for a cold start practice. And I know that can encompass a lot of things. And I know there are several different ways to skin this particular cat, but I know that you're always looking for the optimal way to do something. So in your mind, what are best practices for somebody looking to cold start a business?
The vast majority of patients reside within a very small radius of that door. As a matter of fact, some research shows that up to like 90% of patients reside within just a 3 mile radius of that practice. So, why is this important and how does this apply to the mission, vision, purpose? And Steve, I think you and I have had conversations about this ad nauseum around all the places that doctors are going to learn about business, to learn about this process of starting a practice. And while there's a lot of really great insights and really great offerings out there, there's also a lot that are, well, just totally off the mark. So, as it were, if we realize that the vast majority of those patients reside within just a 3 mile radius of that door, then understanding what your mission, vision, and purpose is in serving your community is really number one of what this is all about, right? It's not about getting a bunch of deals on equipment through some sort of group buy. It's not about getting on panels with some insurances simply because, oh, a peer of mine in another market on the other side of the country is on that plan and they say it pays well and this and that. No, it's about looking inside, looking right there in front of you and understanding. To our listeners out there who perhaps are doctors who are considering cold starting a practice, start with this. What's your mission, vision, purpose? Truly, what are you setting out to do in your practice? What is the scope of care you're looking to offer and to whom? And I would challenge you to even take it a step further and ask yourself why. Why do you want to deliver that scope and care and services to patients in your community? And then you'll notice that in the context of kind of getting in touch with yourself and your own vision of what you truly want to do in serving patients and growing the business, now we come to see that now you've got a mission, vision, purpose that is tailored to your target market, which is again that 3 mile radius right there in your community. So I say all of this to, I suppose, pull it all together with, one of these critical best practices. If you're looking to cold start a practice, get in touch with your mission, vision, purpose, and let that be the start of everything.
Awesome. So digging into that, I'm going to presume that a mission of I want to open a new eye care practice isn't good enough. What makes a compelling vision?
The vision is more about a future state. What do you envision your contribution to this broader ecosystem that you're operating in? And then your purpose is really that why, right? I know we have a lot of fans of Simon Sinek out there, right? So the why, getting to the why. So if you come to kind of breaking those down, we come to see again, the mission is what do we do and for whom? The vision is what is this future state that we're seeing, that we're contributing to, building towards, and then that purpose is that deeper why, right? So for example, within Akrinos, our mission, as I shared, is we're on a mission of making the business of practice ownership approachable, accessible, and profitable to optometrists who are starting, growing, and transitioning their business. That's our mission. Our vision our vision is that we've created an environment, we've created the systems and the tools so that doctors in private practice can grow and thrive in sustainable, profitable businesses. And our purpose, our why, Steve, ties back to some of those stats I shared early on, right? As we're looking at this rate of physician burnout, the cost of care, the quality of care, right? Our purpose here at Akrinos is to change that. And we're changing that through empowering more doctors to be in private practice.
Awesome. So, taking this to the next step, let's assume everybody listening who might be interested in opening a practice, let's say those steps are done. They've got a clear mission, vision, and purpose, and maybe even they know approximately where they'd like to open their practice. Because I think your point about proximity, where you are in the community, is extremely well made and vitally important. What happens next?
What happens next? So I would invite our listeners to consider the cold start journey as a three-phase journey. You have your planning phase, your development phase, and your launch phase. So the planning phase is all about the analytics, creating the plan, and assembling the team to bring that plan to reality. So this is where we start with constructing a robust business plan. And a business plan is not going to some Gen AI and saying, "Hey, can you write me a business plan for this concept?" A business plan needs to be needs to include a few vital pieces, okay? The least of which is that financial forecast and feasibility analysis. And I say that because this is where you're truly pulling together, you're quantifying everything that's in that vision. Right? We do this internally around Akrinos. We do this in 3 years. That's pretty much standard what banks are looking for, right? Is a good, thorough, robust 3 year financial forecast and feasibility analysis in the context of that broader business plan, and then you pull it all together with the true feasibility study. Steve, this is where you look at the startup cost to understand, okay, I need to borrow this much money, or I need to come up with this much money, whether we're borrowing from a bank, whether perhaps you've saved and you're going to put money into it or what have you. But we realize there's going to be a startup capital that we need. Then we're going to have some cash flow projections that are going to deliver to us a net income figure. And ultimately, we want to see how does our debt service, realize we're going to have to owe this money back to someone. How does the debt service correspond with the net income that's left over? And that's where we come to quantify calculated financial feasibility. So if we get back to this planning phase of the cold start, it's all about quantifying the vision. As I just shared, these steps of how you can construct a financial forecast and feasibility analysis. Now, obviously, that's going to be put in the context of a much broader business plan, which perhaps we'll get deeper into in this conversation or another conversation. And as it were, that kind of stands as the backbone around which to embark on this journey. So once you've constructed this strategic business plan, inclusive of the financial forecast and feasibility analysis, well, now we're ready to get to work. And to get into work, it's about building your team. Remember, in the planning phase, we're wanting to quantify and build the team to get started in this process. So the team is going to consist of, well, Team Akrinos. How was that for a wink? I'm not much of a winker, Steve. So maybe, you know.
You know what? I'm not either, and I'm not good at evaluating it. I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
There we go. A 7 out of 10 on the wing. Okay. So you want to have your team, and your team needs to consist of your business consultant, needs to consist of an attorney that knows the laws in your state. Y'all, please don't go to inkfile.com to to organize the legal side of your business. Work with an attorney. You know, Steve, I like to say, look, if you're starting a business and your business is going to be a kiosk in the mall selling cell phone cases, okay, do whatever. You can go to inkfile.com to organize the business. You can do your taxes through TurboTax or whatever. But I don't know about you, Steve. If you're going to go to a bank and borrow four, five, six, $700,000 to cold start a business, invest in a real team. Invest in actual business consultants that know what they're doing and can guide you the right way with actual financial models that are proven. Invest in a legal team that knows the laws specifically for optometry, right? Because healthcare also is a whole different beast unto itself. But an attorney and a legal team that know healthcare law in your state. You'll also want to be sure that you have a healthcare realtor on your team. Steve, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart every time I learn of a situation where a doctor tried to be their own realtor and they signed the line on a lease that puts them in not only a challenging position, but arguably a business ending decision. You got to work with professionals that know what the heck is going on with your business and your business health. So, in building the team, you want your consultant that's going to have all the analytics. You want to have your legal team. You want to have your realtor that's going to understand your market and it's going to know how to go to bat for you and truly negotiate. By the way, y'all, a realtor isn't just a representative to be a middleman or middlewoman to give you the lease. A legit realtor you want on your team is somebody that knows how to negotiate terms, right? Additionally, on that team, and through this process, as you start looking at the properties, you're going to want to have your design team on board as well. And it's critically important that the design team understands modern optometry.
There's a lot there.
So,
So I've been taking nonstop notes because I have a lot of questions for you, and I appreciate the
uh-oh.
depth and the insights here. The purpose of this conversation is to hopefully everybody who's listening should be able to take this and at least have a clear understanding of what their next step might be and what a best practice for this might look like. So in light of that, you went through a ton of different scenarios and a ton of different things for somebody thinking about this to consider. So digging in a little bit deeper, startup costs. If you've got a business
Sure.
plan, you've got a sense for what it is you'd like to accomplish, you've got a mission, vision, and purpose already in mind. Today, 2025, we understand that opening a cold start will cost somewhere between X and Y. What are X and Y?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay.
If you ask some, it'll be 450. Shoestring. Find everything on the cheap, cheap, cheap. Import stuff on the cheap, cheap, cheap. What is the quality of the cheap, cheap, cheap? I don't know. That's what I always ask whenever it's cheap, cheap, cheap. I was like, what's the quality of what we're getting? Right. Um, if you ask Akrinos, startups will go anywhere from 350 to 750. And then if you're wondering, well, Eric, wow, a seven, whoa, those are some pretty big numbers on a startup. I didn't even know that a startup could secure funding for that. And I suppose this is where I'll give a shameless plug for the work we do here at Akrinos, that our business plans are shown to consistently find our clients approved for upwards of 30, 35, 40% above whatever that baseline pre-approval rate was. So if you're in the online communities, you're dancing around and listening to this or that, and that base offering would be, say, 450 or 500K, you can trust that with your Akrinos business plan, you're not going to have that bank coming back talking about these minimums. That bank's going to come back with real money, and also real terms. And that's another thing that sometimes is forgotten with this. The terms that you receive in that loan is going to be based on your financials, the forecast of the market, but also these projected financials of the business itself. So this is where you can see where any one of those variables can have a pretty significant impact on exactly what that offer is going to be, not just in the dollar amount, but also the interest rate and the terms around all of this stuff. So again, it's vitally important that doctors, if they do want to embark in this journey, take a step back and realize, look, these are big decisions. These are decisions that are not to be made nilly-willy, asking questions in an online community. Again, it would be no different from a patient that has the red eye, that reports to work for the day, observes the red eye, and then goes to their peers and says, "Hey, what do you think's wrong with my eye?" You know?
Yeah, and it's incredibly common for people to seek advice wherever they can get it, as opposed to looking for the right advice. And a relentless frustration of mine, those online communities that you're talking about, is that there are sometimes when they give good information, sometimes they'll give good advice, but it depends on who it is that happens to answer at the time you ask. It is a complete crapshoot. When you're talking about a group of 40,000 people on the internet, it's 40,000 people on the internet. Take that with a grain of salt. Take it with a whole heaping tablespoon of salt, as the case might be. But I think what you're saying here is really important. So the range can be, depending on who you ask, several $100,000. So if you end up at the top end of things where you get a loan for, let's say, $700,000, you are then able to build a team like you were talking about before, a team of realtors or legal help or consultants, and get the right equipment and be able to set yourself up for success. And I understand that there's going to be trepidation with somebody embarking on this mission, thinking about, man, can I do this for $400,000, and why should I do this for $700,000 instead? And I've got some, I think, likely answers in my head, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
Look, it's all situational. Just like the patient, every patient is unique. Every pair of eyeglasses that is dispensed is unique. Every pair of eyewear is custom, right? So, as it were, approaching your business in that manner. So, Steve, see, this is where the importance of that financial forecast feasibility analysis and that business plan comes into play, because it's in the context of the financial forecast that you're going to see how the numbers work. Like, how is this thing even feasible? Right? So we're going to show exactly what that looks like, from patient volume to scope of care to optical conversions to, hey, if you want to do a specialty in the practice, I mean, put that on the list as well. Truly going to show how everything will be monetized over time. And then your business plan is kind of that core plan for how we're going to go to market with this stuff, right? So it'll get into greater detail about your operations, your marketing strategy, your team, this and that. So all of that to say, it's in the context of this planning phase and taking the time to roll the sleeves up, investing in proper analytics, investing in a strategic business plan that's custom and unique to your situation in your market. That's where you see whether it's a $400,000 cold start or a $700,000 cold start, all of the answers are right there. All of the insights are right there. When we get to talking about KPIs and performance metrics, once your doors are open and we want to know what, it's all right there. You've already established the milestones, the goals. What do we need to hit by when to be achieving these things? But understand, Steve, just because you have access to say $600,000 doesn't mean you have to spend all that. And that's kind of, I guess, the other side of things is that you want to get access to the most, but then you want to be really strategic on how you're spending it and putting it to use in that business. So you'll notice then that, again, it all ties back to, if you invested in constructing the plan, you invested in constructing that financial forecast and feasibility analysis, now everything is there. And that's another really key piece for everyone to understand also. In this planning phase, when you're quantifying the vision and you're assembling the team, understand that this is laying the groundwork. It's laying that foundation for everything to come. So that's where we can have, well, for instance, I mean, just here in the last week, we just did a business plan on the East Coast. We got a couple cold starts that just opened their doors last month, so they're kind of in their first month in business, right? And then we've got another cold start who's actually already gone through financing and is out looking at properties. So take those examples that just occurred in the last week within Akrinos. Again, some established clients that are getting to these next phases in their project, other folks that are just starting their journey, right? But what they all have in common, Steve, is that they all have that beautiful foundation for their business. They've all invested in the business foundations. So when you look at these financial forecasts and feasibility analysis, remember I mentioned we've got some clients that just opened last week. So now we're in kind of like their first month open. Okay. We're still going back to that financial forecast and feasibility analysis to inform things that are going on in the business now. And in some cases, we would have first written these business plans 12 and 15 months ago, but they're still being utilized today to inform decisions. And the financial model is still being used in real time. You got to start with that planning phase. And the planning phase is what? It's about quantifying the mission, vision, purpose. Let's get some numbers around this thing and let's assemble our team.
So what I'm
So
hearing
from
you
the planning
say,
phase,
sorry, what I'm hearing you say, at least during the development phase, um, or the planning phase rather, is don't guess at it. That's been consistent from what you're talking about. Don't guess at how much money you might need. Don't guess at where you should open your practice. Don't guess at how you sign your lease. Don't guess at the equipment you might want. Don't uh, go in with eyes open as much as possible. And then, even once you've opened, don't guess at whether or not you're successful. Have something that tells you whether or not you're successful. There are numbers that should do that for you. It shouldn't be, putting your finger up and guessing which way the wind's blowing.
precisely.
Awesome. So I think that tells a really important story, and I did tell you I had a bunch more questions for you, and I still do. So the you'd mentioned if a practitioner has been in practice for a couple of years and they're ready to take the next step and open a practice, that's one scenario. How much practical experience of being a practicing optometrist is necessary before you open a cold start?
That's a remarkable question. I can say firsthand within Akrinos' experience, our youngest cold starting doctor was 18 months out of optometry school when he embarked on the journey with Akrinos. And it was about a 15-month process to get his doors open. And now he is in year two and he is doing amazing things. Steve, you could be 10 years out of optometry school, but the debt to income is way off. And even with the most remarkable business plan in the best community attractive market out there, it could still be a deal breaker, right? Um, Flip side of the coin, you could have amazing debt to income ratio in an amazing market, but not have a business plan, and you'll kind of get the bare minimum that the bank wants to give to you. So you kind of need all of these things to line up, right? Strong debt to income, strong market, strong business plan. A word about market. The fact is this, y'all. Every market is a strong market. It's a matter of what type of practice is it a strong market for? And it's really important that our listeners soak that in. To that, I'll say this: each environment could be an amazing market for different types of practices. Okay. So if your vision is, I want to go and start a practice in an underserved urban environment, urban market that needs medical care, there are places here in the city of New Orleans that I think would be a remarkable fit for that type of practice. If that's your vision and you're in Beverly Hills, if the vision for the practice is, I want to do a medically oriented practice serving an underserved inner city urban population, would that vision be a good fit in Beverly Hills 90210? Flip side of the coin, if the vision was, I want to open a I want to open a private practice that has nothing but luxury bespoke eyewear, and I want to offer aesthetic services, and I'm going to contract with someone to even be able to do Botox in my office and stuff like that. If that's the vision, I don't know if an inner city underserved population would be the place to establish that vision. That vision may be more suited for a Beverly Hills 90210. So, all of this to say, the takeaway from that little paradigm, if you will, Steve, is that there's no such thing as a bad market, but there is such thing as the wrong business model in a market.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a bad market, but a bad market fit.
Bingo, exactly. In my bike racing days, I used to be a competitive cyclist. Back in my bike racing days, we used to say there's no such thing as bad weather, just the wrong selection of clothing.
Right, right,
Now, when it's 29 degrees, freezing rain in February, you think it's all bad.
right, right, right. But I think that's super important. So understanding not just who you are and what you want to be and what you want to provide, but understand whether or not that mission fits where you're thinking about doing that. So, how what tools are available to a practice that, let's say, wants to provide healthcare in an urban area? How do you identify whether or not that's a good fit? And also, I think maybe a little bit more nuanced and perhaps too nuanced for this kind of conversation. But when you're in an urban area, moving a couple of blocks changes demographics pretty significantly. And to your earlier point, where 90% of the patients that are likely to see you are within a 3 mile radius, that's probably quite different when you're talking about urban density. So, to restate the question, because I got went kind of around that, um, are there resources available to a practice or to a potential practice to find, here's what I'd like to do, and is this a good area for me to do that in?
Absolutely, Steve. Um, so as far as resources, right? Free resources. Look, you go to a site, dataus.io. It's census-backed data. You could look at a market. It's they generally organize that around city. So you're looking at, you know, datausa.io. Again, free resource. It's all census-backed data. Obviously, we're living in this world now of so much data available online. So you'll want to be sure you're getting in touch with and understanding your basic demographic data. So, age, household income, education, employment, stuff of that nature. Steve, a lot of that stuff is easily accessible through a lot of different tools, such as that one I just shared, again, datausa.io. But let's face it, as with anything, if you really want the targeted answers, you really need the targeted tools and equipment to be able to do that. And I think here's where we can make so many analogies to modern optometry, right? I mean, heck, just simply what wide field retinal imaging can do today, whereas a couple years back that was not even it was not even possible. So that being said, it's never ending, the analytics that we're pulling into this that are all specific to eye care, eyewear, contact lens, and any sort of services that doctors of optometry would be providing. So again, as with many things, there's a lot of free options out there and a lot of hacks, but it's only going to get you so far, right? The real goods come from wide field retinal imaging. The real goods come from solid business foundations provided by a team like Akrinos.
I think that that's so important. I have one last question for you, and it's
Sure.
going to be a little bit of a fast forward. So, assuming we follow the best practices that you've laid out here, we've got a business plan in place. We found the right market fit. We found the right area. We opened up our practice. Grand opening is today. What can I expect in the next couple of months? And like assuming I'll refer back to my business plan to see like what I expected in terms of
Sure.
that. But day one, grand openings happening today. What do the next couple of months look like? And if I'm in this situation, how do I keep from going insane?
Sure. Yeah. That's fantastic. Um, Now that being said, Steve, I can only speak to what the coming months look like from the lens of practices we have worked with.
Sure.
So I can't speak on account of practices that have not worked with Krinos.
Right.
Um, but that being said, you get to the start line, you open your doors, what to expect. First and foremost, I think it's important for everybody to expect to be proactive in your business and in your community, right? As a matter of fact, getting out there in the community, old fashioned networking, we call it community growth internally. In this day and age of so much digital and all the cool things you can do with digital engagement, at the end of the day, Steve, there is no substitute for you as the new doctor that's just opened your doors in your community, knowing that 90% of your future patients reside within a 3 mile radius of your office in most markets. I mean, obviously,
Right.
if you're in a rural market, maybe it'll be a little further, right? But get out there. Expect to be proactive in your business. Expect to be proactive in your business and not only taking care of your patients, your first patients, but really get out there and target areas of your community that you're going to get out there and go meet. Bring business cards, drop off brochures, host an event. It doesn't even have to be like a formal trunk show. Just host like an open house. So much of this early period of the business is about continuing to get the word out. Now, by the way, Steve, don't start that process when you open your doors. As a matter of fact, marketing and community engagement is something you want to start. We have practices that work with us starting that 90 days before they open. Same with that website. You don't want to wait and like be opening your website like the week before you open. We got to be sure that thing is set up so that all the web crawlers can start to find you well in advance of your opening. Furthermore, first weeks and months in business, know every step of how you get paid and be sure you are getting paid. If you want to take insurances, be sure you're properly credentialed with those carriers. We got to be sure when you get your doors open, you got to be sure you're credentialed on the plans that you want to be credentialed on and that all aspects of your revenue cycle are being touched. You know how you're going to get paid. We need to be sure that your front end team knows how to check patients out, knows how to collect copay, knows how to collect the entirety of anything that a patient would owe. And hey, if you find yourself opening your doors and you're not yet credentialed with some carriers, you're wanting to get credentialed with what have you, hey, that's fine. Collect all the payment today from the patient. You got to get your money in the door. If you then overcharge a patient, you owe them a refund, that's fine. Who doesn't like to get a call, hey, or better yet, just get it in the mail, hey, this is a refund. You overpaid us, amazing. But it's really important that doctors understand how they're going to get paid and that they have the infrastructure set up to get paid. This also includes know that EHR front to back. Know your EHR through and through so that you're properly moving that patient through the EHR and you're able to collect all that revenue. It's also vitally important that the back end of the business is appropriately set up. Be sure your accounting software is set up. That chart of accounts is set up. You've aligned with a bookkeeper. You've got all these systems in place. You're going to have money coming in. You're going to have money going out. We got to be able to have some insight to understand what that stuff is so that you can understand A, the cash flows in the business, and then B, make more informed decisions around the goals we're setting, some of these business goals that we're needing to account for. So I know it feels like I'm throwing a lot. We're talking about day one of the business, and it feels kind of like a lot coming at you, right?
But I actually think it's
But
it's
it's
important though the way that you're delivering it and the sheer volume of things that you are thinking about in this presentation are reflective of the sheer volume of things that you've got to understand when you're about to open a practice. And it is, and to say nothing of the things that are going unmentioned right now because we've got a limited time to talk about. So I
sure,
actually think that
sure.
this tells a really important story. A cold start, I don't know if it sounds easy, but there are a million steps that are unclear and unknown until you're elbow deep in the process. So having somebody like you here to share your insights and your experiences in helping practices do this successfully, I think is invaluable. Now, out of respect for time and for brevity in this episode, I've already got 8 best practices written down, and I'd love to recap them with you and tell me what I missed or the bits that I
Sure.
maybe misunderstood. So, best practices for opening a cold start. Start with your mission, vision, and purpose. Know who you are, what you want to do, and why you want to do it. Step 2, fit your business to your community. There's no such thing as a bad market, but there is such a thing as a bad market fit. 3, understand your demographics. If you're going to open in your community, know who is around you and the kinds of things that you can succeed in doing for those demographics. There are resources available to you. There are free ones, but if as you're about to open, do invest in something a little bit more specific so you know what you're doing. Step 4, don't guess at what success looks like. Seems pretty self-explanatory, but surprisingly, it's not. Don't guess at what success looks like and don't guess at what failure looks like either. And don't hesitate to change when you notice one of those happening. Avoid shortcuts or hacks. And this is something that you didn't say explicitly, but was a theme throughout many of the things that you did say. Things like a generative AI business plan. things like inkfile.com. Those are shortcuts that might seem like a good use of your time, but the net result of it is you might not get approved for that loan, or what you get approved for is less than you need because the business plan didn't explain what you're going to do. And actually, from a banker standpoint, to get AI slop, as he said, as he described it, it makes perfect sense. Why would I give this amount of money to somebody unwilling to dedicate the time to write it properly? It's pretty self-explanatory, right? Number 6, invest in good partners and tools. If you're going to avoid shortcuts and hacks, then the inverse of that should also be true. Don't avoid an expert. Find experts that you vibe with that can help you do what you want to do. Step 7, community growth, and start before your practice is open. Community growth is be in your community, show up where your business is, have an online presence, have a reputation. And you didn't mention this, but I'm sure implied, have a brand. Such and such family eye care, not a brand, right? But understand something that your community can grab onto and know, okay, this is where I'm going for my eye care from now on. And then step 8, you own your financials on the front end and on the back end. How'd I do?
Steve, I'd say that was a pretty darn good list of best practices for cold starting. May I add one more?
Absolutely.
May I add one more that's really pulls it all together? And this doesn't speak so much to the nuts and bolts that we just kind of laid out, but this is more what it means to venture into entrepreneurship. And it's about being proactive. Don't stand on the sidelines. This is you. You're participating in your success. Be proactive. Number 2, be assertive. Make decisions. These are your decisions in your business. Don't be pushed around. Don't let somebody push you this way or that way. Oh, you need to work with this vendor or that vendor. No. Be assertive in making decisions that are in your best interest in your business. And then number 3, Steve, go for it. Go for it. There's going to be peaks, there's going to be valleys, y'all. There's going to be times when you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this earlier? There's going to be other times where you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? Okay. But through all of it, you've developed your vision. We've laid out here in this episode, Steve, a bit of the process, some of the stuff to do, some of the process. And then the third is perseverance. So you got your vision, invest in the process and invest in the team that's there to serve you and persevere. And I guarantee you're going to achieve greater things than you ever thought possible in your private practice.
Amazing. That last bit reminded me of what I think is a Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now.
Right now. Love it.
Awesome. Eric, thank you so much for sharing your insights, for coming on to best practices. How could somebody get in touch with you?
Y'all head on over to Akrinos.com. You can connect with me through that. I'm also pretty active in LinkedIn, so find me there, Erich Mattei, Erichmattei, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. And hey, if you are on that journey, even just drop a note just to say like, hey, I'm on the journey. Hey, you guys inspired me. Obviously, if there's any ways that Akrinos can help you, we would be honored to do so. But no matter where you are on this journey, y'all, just keep trucking along, honor that vision, stay committed to those processes, and persevere, and great things will happen.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to Best Practices, and hit subscribe if you haven't.